Charles Vega, United States Army, Vietnam. Charles was one of my Vietnam veterans. Interviewed him in 2010 in Dinuba, California, where I interviewed other veterans at that time, and I'm just happy to have his story. He tells a tremendous story. He was the only Hispanic in his battalion, and what he experienced with that. He was a mechanic in the Army, rode convoys into Vietnam and got into some thick action in Vietnam. Wasn't, quote, a rifleman per se through an MOS, but he was a young man of 19 years of age, and he grew up fast with the combat that he did see. So through his eyes and ears, I share it with you here today on my Voices of History YouTube channel, and it'll be on my radio station too. But Charles was drafted at the age of 19, was in Vietnam 1969 into 1970. I believe he got out in 71. He had a 2-year enlistment, retired as a sergeant from the Army, and I'll let him tell the rest. I want to thank Michael and Darlene Sarofsky for making it possible for me to share Charles' story today. God bless you, Michael and Darlene. Looking forward to the day that I get to meet you in person. Thank you for your support of my work and our veterans, and I appreciate both of you so much. Thank you. Folks, if you'd like to sponsor a story like Michael and Darlene, there's information in the video description on my website, larrycappetto.com, and in the comments section of every video, there's an opportunity for you to donate to this work. It's a labor of love, folks. Don't take it for granted. Please help give back into this. If you're being blessed, a lot of you are watching these videos, please consider giving back, and donating to my work is one of the best ways to do that. So the first comment of this video and all the videos is the link to donate to my work. So I would really appreciate it. Thank you for watching and listening and subscribing to this channel. Thank you for listening to Voices of History Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Listener supported. A great supplement to this YouTube channel. So God bless you. Happy Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you soon.
I'm 62 years old.
And what year did you go in the military?
I entered in the service of 1969. And that's when Nixon was around, and I was married at the time, had no children. I was barely married a year. Met my wife in this hometown that I was born in. And actually I didn't know what to do. I was so scared because it was 169,500 guys got drafted that year of June. And so Nixon was saying we need to replace new people at Vietnam. And so I was stationed in Fort Ord, California, and went to Fresno. And I was hoping I was going to flunk or something because I had no children. And it was kind of scary, and I passed with flying colors. My health was very good. And I had just gotten out of high school. And the experience that I had in Fort Ord, California was scary because they called you every name in the book. It was Rangers. And the basic training was awesome, though. I would say that from today, that's what saved my life. And back then, everybody had long hair or sideburns, Elvis Presley look or Beatles look. I was with a flower child. And it was so funny because when we arrived in Fort Ord, some of the guys would say, well, could you leave a little bit of the sideburn, or could you leave the ponytail? And the barbers would say, okay, we'll leave a little bit. And then all of a sudden, they just started shaving our heads. And then all the Mexicans, all the whites, and everybody all looked the same. So then from there, we were in, they called processing stage. And that took a week, and so they showered everybody down because there was infections and stuff like that going on. And once we got there, they said, everybody's going up to boot camp. So this boot camp was the best training I ever had. We had Sergeant Holycross, who was only about 5'6", but he was all muscles. And the experience that we had there, if one made a mistake, we all paid for it. And so we did a lot of push-ups. We did 5 miles hikes before breakfast, another 5 miles after breakfast, and plus sit-ups and push-ups and everything. That was the very best shape I was in. And the funny thing about it, we had a couple guys that looked like Gomer Pyle. And every mistake that they did, you didn't want to call a non-officer a sir. And he says, you call me sergeant. And the guy says, okay, sir. So he got hit in the helmet by the instructor. And so we all got punished for his mistakes. And then bivouac, I remember we had bivouac that was within the 8th week of training. We had an actual war game. And this is the first time, within 7 seconds, you had to have your mask on and be prepared for the fire to come in. And I remember falling into this ditch, hit my head on a piece of wood. And by the time I got my mask on, because it threw tear gas, I threw up inside my mask. And but that was the best experience because that made me aware of my surroundings. And then after another 9 weeks, we had our individual training. And I became an E1 from an E0. And so my MOS was B220, which was a light wheel mechanic. And then I finished that, and that was great. And I became a private first class. And from there, I was going to get orders to go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to work on tanks. And so I had called my wife, says, we're going to be going to Oklahoma, and I'll be able to get an apartment there. But then overnight, everybody's orders got flagged, so that means canceled. And we were going to go straight to Vietnam within less than 24 hours. So we got to see our girlfriends, wives, or whatever. And this is where the scary part came in. We traveled air base from Monterey, California. I said, this is the last time I'm going to see home. So frightened that I didn't know I was going to enter another world that I didn't know anything about. So it was a 22-hour flight. And once we got before getting to Vietnam, the area of Guam, you could just smell the atmosphere and the heat. The humidity was so different. And we landed at 10 o'clock at night. And once they opened the airplane doors, all the quietness went away. There was nothing but gunfire. You could see tracers in the sky, bombs going off. And so I was stationed in Long Binh. And that night I had to sleep outside. There was so many soldiers on the ground. It was packed. And I was so scared that I didn't sleep the whole night. And so the next day we would go to Long Binh and heard that Bob Hope and the Gold Diggers was going to be there. And I said, all right, I'm going to see Bob Hope for the first time in my life, especially the Gold Diggers. And I go, well, I'm sorry to tell you though, Corporal Charles, I got another rank, which was an E4 once I hit country. And it was so different. I said, man, look at these people are so far behind times. I don't remember, a lot of people told us that Highway 1 where Benoit, Long Binh was, that was the most fire that was being hit at that time because all the convoys that went in, the Vietnamese people had tunnels from jungle to city to villages all over. And I was the only Mexican out of the whole battalion. I said, where's everybody else at? And so I had a fear. I had 2 wars going on. I had a ritual problem going on inside the base. And I was more nervous than anything else. And at times I go, what am I doing here? You know, I'm having 2 wars on. We all should be brothers and everything. And all this drugs were going on. There were pot, heroin, drinking. And they all wanted me to follow through that. And I said, no, I can't do that. And because I said I wanted to have a family and be straight and come back with an honorable discharge. So we went out to the jungle for 3 months, and after 3 months to 2 months, we'd come back for heavy maintenance with our dozers. And that's when we got ambushed a lot. I had lost, one day I lost 10 guys. We were waiting for the dozers to come in, and they would be loading up on trailers at the end of the day. And you would have these village people going by. And I remember Mama-san and Papa-san passed by on a scooter, and they threw a sea ration box. And it was a claymore with thousands of BBs, a C4, but it looked like a sea ration box. And what we were doing, we were just talking about back home, throwing rocks at empty beer cans. And Wimpy Jones went and picked up and straightened up the cans, and I didn't notice that he had picked an object up, and he came back and he sat by the dual tires, and he had an explosive in his hand. And there was 9 of us more sitting there by the side of the dual tires, and I was in charge, and I told the guys, I says, you know, I don't care if you guys smoke pot, drink, or what, but when it's time to get to business, because these dolls are going to come back, we have to be aware and be up straight. And I offered to buy coffee that time, and we had the first cab with us. That was the artillery guys, and they normally had coffee. And so then Dexter comes and says, he goes, Charles, do you want me to help you with the rest of the coffee? And I go, sure, come and help me. And all this time, Wimpy was playing with that trigger head. And we normally carried our weapons with us. And so I had a compressor welder behind this trailer that we were walking to where the tanks were at, and the bomb went off. And I felt fire come. I thought I got hit because I felt like fire. My whole back was full of blood. And in basic training, they taught you to hit the ground when the incoming came in. And that's what I thought. I thought it was a motor that came in. So I felt my back, and I saw no blood, and I automatically pulled out my weapon, my Luger, turn on for enemy return. And I saw Dexter, he had blood coming out from his neck. And I was trying to, I held his neck, just tried to stop the blood from coming out. And all my other guys were dead. The remaining 8 that was there. Dexter's, Wimpy's face was all gone, and his whole chest was gone. And that's one of the worst experiences that I've ever had. And I come back with post-traumatic stress, and I had war guilt because I've had so many attacks that came in, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't one of them that went down. And for instance, we got hit in another village also. And that time I was driving a deuce-and-a-half truck, and we received 10 bullets in front of our truck, and the other guy got it, and I remained alive. But
you mentioned the guilt. I mean, you come home, it's survivor's guilt or what have you. I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, a lot of us come back with post-traumatic stress because we never, in our lives when we were kids, we didn't know. It's just like the movie that we just saw the other day at the high school about you're entering hell. He is exactly right what he said. all of a sudden within 9 weeks you're going to have to learn how to defend yourself and fire a weapon and kill people you don't know. And then you're trying to, all this time you're trying to think, right, that this is the right thing that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to defend your mother country, and you don't want this to be in the United States killing and people being raped, people taken advantage of and not having their freedom. And you're trying to bring all these principles together and say, yeah, it's the right thing, you know, because I don't know, when you feel that somebody's pointing a weapon at you for the very first time, and you know that you don't react right away to shoot your rifle. I mean, in training, you're doing targets and you're not shooting at people when you're being trained. So it's a whole complete different feeling from practicing to the real thing. And when you do the real thing, it's the most scariest thing in your life. And when you have somebody beside you get shot and you actually see what's going on, and you see the guts coming out or the head coming off, it's a whole entire different atmosphere. And that's when you learn how to do that. And then at night, we had set like a perimeter when we were out in the jungle, like a wagon wheel. And we would have the Hollister's 175s, the Sherman tanks, grenades, grenade launchers, everything. And we would fire out in the jungle for 1 full minute. And so that was to prevent the Vietnamese people to set up booby traps and stuff like that. And at times we would find 7 bodies, maybe 25. And you become an animal out there. And with our dozers, we would just run over them and bury them.
This was in 1969 or 70 or what? When was this?
The November of '69 all the way through 1970. I didn't come home till I got a 10-day early out from the year of 70. So I was there almost all the way till November of 70, lacking 10 days from the year tour I had.
So you had the one tour there, basically, and then were you ever wounded?
No.
Physically?
No.
Okay.
I got.
You're telling me some pretty heavy stuff. I've interviewed a lot of vets. I mean, many Vietnam vets, a lot of vets total. But you know, without having ever been there, I can get a sense for some of the things you saw and what you went through. Do you find it helps to talk about it?
I actually get disturbed when I start talking about it.
Well, you saw the article in the paper here locally. You called me. Why did you call me?
It's to get this out to make sure that the young people, because I was afraid for my sons to go. And I don't think it's necessary at sometimes in some wars. The other wars, because I didn't understand, back in my days, it was half of the people were for it and half of the people weren't for it. So I think that was one of the toughest times other than World War II. World War II was because we got invaded. And when we got invaded, then I said, yes, that's an alternative of what we're supposed to do. It's more logical to do something like that. But when you got the Vietnam War, you had half the people that were not for it. And a lot of times, a lot of veterans, or not veterans, just civilians, didn't know if this was the right thing to do. And when you were receiving an order in combat, people still hesitated. So they got a lot of people killed, not realizing that your fallen brother would get. And this is where war guilt comes in. And this is where, like I explained, when I was in Long Binh, I was the only Mexican out of a whole battalion. That's 5,000 guys. And that kind of like, I'm 18 years old and I'm shocked. I'm still a kid. I'm not even 21. Yeah. And even though I was married for a whole year, it just, it surprised me. And I just, the reason what I want to get through to is these young people is to be really aware of your surroundings and kind of like tell you what's going on in the world and how lucky we are to be in the United States. It's a beautiful country, and just watch your back, you know, and it's just hard to play. I'm not trying to pretend that I know it all. I'm just trying to say that the experience that I went was, I can never ever forget it, and the ones that didn't make it back, it hurts me so because they never had their life. And a lot of us were at that time trying to go to college and start a life.
Have you ever been to the Vietnam Wall?
No.
You ever want to go there?
Yes.
You think you know a lot of names on that wall?
Like I said, I didn't know their nicknames, but one gentleman I went to school with here, he went before me and he didn't make it back. And then you get you don't know any of this stuff till you come home. You don't know how many died or who died or what. And a lot of guys I went to school with here went. And I go, oh my God, like Larry Roberts, he was a fireman here, he went. But I got to see him. He went the year before I went. And he was in transportation. And he only had 2 weeks left of his tour when I arrived. Same thing with another gentleman from Reedley, and he became a police officer. And then this guy I used to pick in high school, his name was Tinker. And then that's how I felt all the things I did in my life that I shouldn't have done. You know, it makes you grow up. And then you respect the other gentleman. And he went to Korea, this other gentleman I told you I picked on.
So
it made me a better person.
Did you work on trucks, did you say? You're a mechanic?
I was a light wheel mechanic, and I was going to learn how to work on dozers.
So did you ever get out in the field, in the bush, what do they call it?
Yes.
Patrol and...
Actually, we weren't on patrols. We were mostly on convoys. So we had like Sherman tanks. We had dozers. So we were like a construction type of setup because what our main object was to flatten the jungle as much as possible. But at that time, the Agent Orange had already been spread, and a lot of us got infected by it.
Did you?
Yes, I got the Agent Orange, and I had the diabetes. I'm 100% disabled.
How would you define combat? If you had to define the word combat, what would you say it was? Combat.
Combat to me is being hit and run. That's what we were mostly at, and we were trying to teach these Arvins to defend themselves, to be aware and how to do the equipment that we had, and how to perform the right way to do it. And they normally, it really made you mad because they didn't pay attention as much as they were supposed to. And it was kind of hard to learn their languages. And I was trying to teach them how to be mechanics and at the same time to be aware of their surroundings. If there was fire coming in, how to defend themselves, and to be a unit, not as an individual, but to be a unit and protect each other. Sort of like these movies that come from 300. Have you seen that film, 300?
I don't think so.
Well, one was like the hand-to-hand combat is to do the thrust. It was 300 soldiers going against thousands, and they survived. And it's to learn how to fight and survive. One would have a shield behind them, the other one would thrust. You push, you thrust. And your left side, you would have another person here protecting this side and the back side. In other words, all the way around as a four. And it was basically the same thing when you were out there. I've had where you go out there and you're in the middle of the jungle and we're surrounded in a wagon train. We're a unit. So we're protecting each other in case enemy fire came in. Of course, we had our radios. And I remember one time 500 NVAs were coming after us. And that's Marines, and they're in the Viet Cong side. So we called air support come in. And within 5 minutes, they were gone from the Cobras. And our Cobras could throw nails for a whole football field. Within a half inch, they'll be completely full. Wow. So, and then the airfire we called was a Spider, and it was a bomb that threw a fire, and if it landed on your skin, you'd keep on burning. You wouldn't survive. So I saw all that.
Did you spend a lot of time out in the field, or?
Mostly all the time, three to 4 months, and then 2 weeks of heavy maintenance. And at the very end, I couldn't do it anymore because I had to put this gentleman in prison too. I have a lot to tell you. I know I only have an hour.
Well, you got about 50 minutes, but listen, you're doing good. If some of this stuff's hard to talk about, just skip over it, okay?
All right.
I don't want you to be uncomfortable, but mainly after the personal side of your experience, not so much the blood and guts, although sometimes stuff comes out, but how it changed you. One of my questions is, how did Vietnam change you, Charles?
Well, my family life, I lost my mother when I was 8. I was in 9 foster homes. It made me a man. I grew up as a cowboy. I lived with different people other than my own. I lived with Italians, Armenians, Czechoslovakian people, which was the last foster home I was in, Sanger. And they taught me how to milk cows, take care of cattle. And then I admired my foster brother, Lonnie Reject. He was a reserve soldier in the National Guard, so I says, I want to be like him. So that was my main objective, to go and face that I was getting drafted. And I says, I want to be like this guy. Shiny boots, all the muscles, that's what a kid wants. And it made me appreciate to be more of me, because before, when I was a kid, I was saying, poor me, I lost my mom, never had a mother, never had a family, even though I had 4 brothers and 1 sister. I never grew up with them. And I thought I had it bad. So it made me appreciate life itself more.
Yeah. So you got out of Vietnam, what month was that?
I entered in June of the 11th, 1969, and I got out June of 12th of 1971.
So now tell me
2 years.
Okay, tell me about your last day in Vietnam.
The last day in Vietnam was like a big relief off my chest. Because before I left, I remember kissing the ground and saying, I'll never be able to come back. I was ready to die. I talked to God and I told him, God, please let me do the right thing. If I don't make it back, I'll be one of your soldiers from heaven and do the right thing. I don't want to do anything bad. And when I came back, I thanked him. And all the clothes that we wore back there, they stunk like jungle. So they burned all our clothes, and they issued us new uniforms. And then they asked me to re-enlist. And they were offering us at that time $10,000 cash free. You didn't have to pay any taxes. And I says, how many years do we have to put in? And they said 6. And I go, oh man, that's a lot of years for just $10,000. And I says, no. And then my orders read another tour in Vietnam. So I denied it. I says, no, I don't want to do that. So my orders read for Anchorage, Alaska. And I says, no, I don't want to go to Anchorage, Alaska. And I says, I'm not used to that type of climate, because I made sergeant. And and then I already pulled my tour, so my orders got mixed up. And I said, well, where do you want to go? I said, I'd like to go back to Fort Ord, California, Monterey. So I've been able to bring my wife back, and we lived together and did the remaining of my 9 months left. And so I come out with honorable discharge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you came home, did you have a homecoming?
No.
Were you treated bad?
Yes.
Can you tell me where you were and what happened?
I came back, and we landed in Oakland, and we got food thrown at us and called us baby killers. And I was expected a whole different kind of atmosphere. I was hoping that we would say good job or thanks for coming and serving for us, and it was a whole entire different thing. So a lot of us didn't want to wear our uniform when we came back. And I was kind of like secluded for a while. And there was no recognition until Desert Storm started to come in. And you had all these civilian people that were National Guard that never went to war. You had postmen, firemen, just regular people that was in the reserve go to battle. And then that's when they realized that what we went through, and we started getting appreciated because they were honoring all veterans then. But it wasn't until 20 years later.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've heard some pretty sad stories about the homecomings that people never had, or you've described some difficult stuff, so I'm not going to ask you the most difficult thing you went through. But did you lose friends or that were killed or wounded around you at the time?
Yes, I did.
You mentioned the one guy with the attack and the other guys that were killed. And were you able to help them? Did you ever help with medevac flights or anything like that? Or
No, I was just one of the soldiers in the convoys. And no, there was medics around. We yelled medics, but by the time the medic came, they were all gone. And then I did write to a couple of gentlemen that, for instance, like Dexter, that got hit right here in the neck, and I wrote to him for a while, but he was paralyzed. He got sent back home, and I kept in touch with him for about 6 months, and then he passed. But nobody else made it except for me, and that's why I couldn't believe it, because there's thousands of BBs all over the place, and all the tires were flat from the explosion. But I actually came back mad because I didn't get to kill anyone. And I wanted to kill someone so bad. We fired on the jungle, but we didn't know who shot who. Because on the M60, all you see is a tracer. And we saw fire bases that they call fire bases, but they're not really fire bases. It's only like 5 or 6 guys out in the foxhole. And they were mutilated. And sometimes they would put our bodies on tanks, the enemy, and they would drug them until their head was gone. And they lit the birds at us and told us to go home. And then I lost this other buddy that was from Fresno, Aguilar. He bought we had a meeting every night not to buy beer from the village people. They put tiny pieces of glass on it. And that was the first time that I had to shoot my own guy, because he begged me to shoot him.
do you go to the VA do you talk to people at the VA?
Yeah. I've already went to Menlo Park.
When you get diagnosed with PTSD, it's a certain percentage. Are you 100%?
Yes.
Well, like I said, some of this is too difficult, don't even worry about it. But you're giving me some important information.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, you mentioned the young people, Charles. They do need to know some of these things.
Yeah.
You know, what they're going to get into in war, or just the history of war and what happened. I'm going to ask you something. When you saw that video yesterday at the school, there were a couple of segments on Vietnam. How did you feel when you watched those?
I walked away.
Okay. Did the Huey sound bother you? Okay.
Yeah, I had, remember when I was in the field for a while, and we had a warrant officer that was in charge, and this brand new kid came in, and he was only 17. And so every day that we went on patrol, they would ask for a volunteer. And this one kid volunteered, and I was just going to tell him, don't send the new guy out. And so he volunteered to go on a PC, which looks like a tank, and then I think the lieutenant was so dumb to do this, and because he sent him with a bunch of ammo and a blivet. The choppers used to bring them on the hangar, and that would be our diesel fuel for our trucks. And he let him go a scout out at first, and he didn't get but 175 yards, and he blew up to pieces. So many times things like that happen. People picking up booby traps, and so many of them. I could keep on and on.
Well, I mean, you saw, it's like you were at the wrong place at the wrong time, man. I mean, you've seen all this stuff, but how do you, when you were in Vietnam, did you talk to your buddies about the stuff you saw, or did you guys just hold it inside, or was there an opportunity to talk to somebody about it or not, when it was actually happening?
Well, actually, we were all too worried that it would happen to us, and so we normally didn't talk about it. I mean, we were just cold and aware and cautious, and I don't know how to describe it, just a whole completely different, it's not human. You're in a stage like you're the weapon itself, and if you're not the weapon itself and you don't put yourself in that mood or mode, you're gone.
When you came back home, did you transition back into civilian life, or did this thing haunt you all these years? I mean,
it haunted me all these years because I came back with anger, and in my workplace I would be a very nervous wreck, and if somebody told me something wrong, I would fight them, and I got written up quite a bit for fighting, and it was just. And then my wife says, well, you need to go get help. And I told her, no, I'm okay. I'm all right. It's just things I got to go through. And mostly I didn't walk and talk anything about it until my daughter came to high school here. And they wanted to know about Vietnam. And she wrote a story about me. And I was proud of her because she got an A+ out of it. And she made a portfolio. I have it in the car. And actually, nobody really talked about it until I was very old, 25, 30 years later. And I just held all that in, and it says, well, and then I remember back in 1980, I put in for the PTSD and Agent Orange, and I went to Fresno at Townhouse. They said I lost all my records. And so nobody really wanted to help us until a year 2003, that's when I started. And it took me 5 years. And I'm very grateful to this lady that was a 12-year veteran. And she was a veteran herself, so she knew how to help us. So she would have classes with us every 2 weeks and take our stories down and ask us the same questions that you are. And at that time, she would put it to the internet and send it to Oakland and send it to a board, and then the board decides how bad you are. We have to fight for everything we have. all veterans have gone through that. And if no other veteran, and this is how I kind of feel, what I've went through, I help other veterans. And then if it wasn't for the brotherhood, again, of the unit, we would be lost.
Well, I think as other Vietnam vets would hear your story, they're going to be encouraged to maybe talk about what happened to them. That's what happens a lot of times, you know, you hear the stories, but you heard me talk yesterday a little bit about freedom and the flag and things like that. I guess when you're in Vietnam, you're not really thinking about the flag, are you?
No, you're worrying about your brother that's right next to you and your own life. And these meetings that I go to Fresno, it really amazes me now because I was unaware of different missions. It's like you're getting different stories from me from a guy that's done in infantry. And I admire this guy, Jim, that's a postmaster from Clovis. And his was, he had no American soldiers. He just had Arvins. And he was only one or two officers, and he was an officer. And he has war guilt also because he said when he was under fire, there was a radio man in front of him and another, but they were all Vietnamese people, they were Arvins. And here we go again, we're teaching them how to survive and protect their own land. So both of them got hit, and when the front one got hit, they were in the river, and the guy landed on him, made him fall back, and the other guy got killed behind him. And he says, the guilt that I have is I went underwater, but it was not his fault. He was saying that I was dodging the bullet away from getting killed. And so he had a wife and one daughter, but he got sent back home because his daughter had some certain disease, so he was able to go back and then go back again. And I really admire him. He said that even though this one Arvin had a brother that was a Viet Cong, was the enemy, he still could not do nothing because where he was at, he didn't have any.
Okay, keep going.
He didn't have any air support, didn't have no backup, and that's. I go, man, that's awesome, you know. And by going to these meetings, it kind of relieves of what I went through, because now I know a different situation what he went through is amazing. You know, all by yourself. You know, I couldn't imagine. But
So where do you go? What VA do you go to?
I go to Fresno VA. It's the best
clinic there, the vet center.
They have a medical center there that all vets can go to, and you go to PTSD programs. You go to MAD disorder that you have. We even have driving disorder too, because we get mad when somebody cuts in front of us, or somebody doesn't signal, or.
I get mad like that.
You do? Oh God! And they tell us don't do that. You know, especially when I went to Miller Park, you write all this out, and it kind of makes you look at yourself. And then you bring out all the good points, and then you weigh them out, and then you say, what's the outcome going to do? If I knock this guy's teeth out, I mean, you're going to get a satisfaction for just about a second, you know, but what's the outcome going to be? Yeah. Your family, you know, and your reputation, is it really worth it? So it kind of makes you think a little bit more better.
So you came here to talk to me today. Mentioned the young people, you know, needing to hear some of these things. Was it difficult to come today? Or, I mean, are you glad you came?
No, I'm glad I came because I didn't know which one to start out with at first, and the reason why I want these young people not to be gun-ho, you know, because I had 5 uncles that fought in World War II. I had cousins that fought in war. And then the young gentleman I told you about, so I was all pepped up, and I says, you know, I want to be like that. Yeah. And then as a kid, you know, you play war games and stuff like that, you know. It's sort of like a boy thing, but not today now. It's boys and girls do the same. And that's another thing too, that you appreciate all these nurses that help us when we get wounded in the field. And we go to these main hospitals, and they're the last ones we see, especially if you're over the seas and you see, we called you guys round eyes. And some of these guys don't have any faces or anything. I can tell you, keep on here, but I don't, kind of disturbs me a little bit.
No, that's fine.
And the young people want to tell is don't, it's okay if you want to be a soldier, but Jesus, if there's no choice, if you can go to college, go to college. If you got the potential and the energy to do that, do so. Because, I mean, it's great to protect your country, but not if you don't have to, you know. And the war is not a pretty thing. It's not. It's a bad experience, physically, mentally. It's going to disturb you, whether you want to or not, because it's not a movie that you're going to. It's a real actual thing, and it's the most frightening. I think to me, it's more scarier than Freddy the 13th or anything else that's out there. And you really experience how people live, like jungle people that we saw mountain yards out there. It was like, I couldn't believe it. There was naked people out there and people that would have oxes and running water from the river, no showers or anything. And I said, Jesus, back 1969, these people. But they were awesome because they were our scouts. And it was amazing. That 95-year-old woman was wearing no clothes, and she had 2 rice buckets with a bamboo here. For 5 miles she walked, and it was nothing to her. That was amazing.
Charles, what should our country remember about Vietnam? Or what are the lessons learned?
I say, for our brave soldiers, women and men, to always honor our fellow Americans, because we're all heroes. Even our firefighters today, what happened with 211 it's amazing. So actually, even though we had that training that it's in our blood, we're warriors. And it really hurts to see your fellow brother didn't make it back, and appreciate them, and just don't take it for granted. And if you really have your heart desire, be careful. Just be careful and watch each other as brothers and sisters. And I would never left anybody behind, ever. It's just that I got so frustrated with the war guilt. And yes, it could be, at times I think I have other, like my girlfriend's family, all Air Force. And it's beautiful to make it 33 years, but this man couldn't do it. But I guess it takes all kind. And just be proud of who you are. And
Are you proud to be a Vietnam veteran?
I'm really proud. I'm really proud, because in a sense I fulfilled my destination, and I feel better about myself now that I went to all these classes. But I can never ever forget the people's faces that lost their lives, and I'm glad I served right next to them.
How does it feel when, like, the kids thank you for serving your country yesterday? How did that make you feel?
Like a rainbow. Like, awesome. It's to see young people understand what you've gone through, and being one of those veterans that wanted to do something and did do something, realized at the end and said, Jesus, how great America is. Beautiful. We don't want to be anywhere else.
Well, we're about at the end. I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. Hopefully you're okay with it. But at the end of my films, like I showed yesterday, I have the veterans salute into the camera. Can you do that from where you're seated when I ask you?
Sure.
Okay, give me just 1 second here. Okay, just look right into the camera, Charles. Go ahead. Excellent. Thank you.